When she showed up at the dinner I had planned with her ex, she carelessly said, "You don't have the right to question my decisions." I replied, "You're right." I stood up, paid my bill, and left. Once I got into my car, I blocked her. A month later, she saw me at a restaurant with her best friend. What she did next left everyone stunned. My name's Tyler. I'm 32, work as a property appraiser for commercial real estate in Seattle. It's not glamorous, but it pays well, and I've built a comfortable life. Nice apartment in Capitol Hill, a dependable circle of friends, and until recently, what I thought was a solid relationship with someone I genuinely loved. Her name was Lauren. We'd been together for 2 years. Met at a mutual friend's birthday party in July 2022. Hit it off immediately. She was a marketing consultant, sharp as hell, funny, beautiful in that effortless way that made you feel lucky just to be around her. For the first year and a half, everything felt right. We traveled together, spent a long weekend in Vancouver, did a road trip down the Oregon coast, talked about maybe doing Europe the following summer. We talked about moving in together, even casually mentioned what our future might look like. I wasn't rushing anything, but I was committed. I thought she was too. Then things started shifting around August of this year. Subtle at first, she'd be less available, more distracted during conversations, checking her phone constantly. When I asked about it, she'd brush it off. "Work's just crazy right now," she'd say. "This campaign is killing me." I believed her because I wanted to, because I trusted her. It was early September when I first heard the name Cole. We were grabbing coffee on a Sunday morning at our usual spot in Pike Place, and her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, smiled slightly, then put it face down on the table. I didn't think much of it until it happened again. And again. Finally, I asked, "Who keeps texting you?" "Oh, just Cole," she said casually, stirring her latte. "He's an old friend. We've been catching up." "Old friend?" "Yeah. We dated briefly in college. Nothing serious. He moved back to Seattle a few months ago, and we reconnected through LinkedIn of all places." She laughed. "Small world, right?" I nodded, trying to seem unbothered. "That's cool. What's he doing here?" "Tech sales. He's with some startup in South Lake Union. Seems to be doing really well for himself." I nodded again and changed the subject. But something felt off. Not because she had an ex-boyfriend as a friend. I'm not that insecure, but because she'd never mentioned him before. Not once in 2 years. And now suddenly, he was texting her on a Sunday morning. Over the next few weeks, Cole's name came up more and more. She'd mentioned grabbing lunch with him, or that he'd given her advice on a work project, or that they'd gone to some networking event together. Each time, she'd frame it casually, like it was no big deal. And maybe it wasn't. But it started eating at me. One night in late October, I finally said something. We were at her place, she was on her laptop responding to emails, and I was pretending to watch TV. "Lauren, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me." She looked up from her laptop, eyebrows raised. "Okay. Is there something going on with you and Cole?" Her expression shifted, not guilty, but annoyed. "Seriously, Tyler? We're just friends. You're being paranoid." "I'm not trying to be paranoid. I'm just noticing that you're spending a lot of time with him, and it feels like you're not being fully transparent with me." "I don't owe you a play-by-play of my entire day," she snapped, closing her laptop. "I'm allowed to have friends. Male friends. You have female friends, and I've never once questioned that. That's different, and you know it. Those are people I've known for years, and you've met all of them. This is someone you used to date, and I'm only hearing about him now." She sighed, rubbed her temples. "There's nothing going on. Cole and I are friends. That's it. If you can't trust me, then maybe we have a bigger problem than some guy I'm having lunch with occasionally." The way she said it, like I was the one creating an issue, made me back down. "I trust you. I'm sorry. I don't know. Forget it." She opened her laptop again. "It's fine. Just don't make this into something it's not." I dropped it. But the unease didn't go away. Update 1. By mid-November, things between us were genuinely strained. She was distant, spending more evenings, out with colleagues, or meeting up with friends. The physical intimacy that had always been easy between us became forced, infrequent. When I tried to plan date nights, she'd be too tired or have other commitments. I tried to give her space, tried not to be that boyfriend who demanded constant attention. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being slowly pushed out of her life. Then, on November 18th, she texted me. "Hey, I know this is kind of last minute, but Cole's in town for a few more weeks before he moves for a new job opportunity. He wants to grab dinner tomorrow night, and I thought it might be nice if you came along. You two should meet. I think you'd actually get along. I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to say no, to tell her this whole situation made me uncomfortable and that having dinner with her ex-boyfriend was the last thing I wanted to do. But another part of me thought, maybe this is her way of showing there's nothing to worry about. Maybe meeting him will put all this to rest. Maybe I am being paranoid. So I agreed. The next evening, November 19th, I met Lauren at an upscale Italian place in Belltown called Altura. She was already seated when I arrived around 7, looking stunning in a dark green dress I'd never seen before. She smiled when she saw me, stood up, kissed my cheek. Hey babe, you look nice. Thanks. So do you. Is that new? This? No, I've had it forever. She hadn't. Cole's running a few minutes late. Traffic from his place, I guess. No problem. We sat down, and she immediately started talking about her day, some client drama, a coworker who was driving her crazy. I nodded along, but I was distracted, anxious about the evening ahead. We ordered drinks. She got a glass of Pinot Noir. I got a beer, and made small talk. 10 minutes later, Cole walked in. He was exactly what I'd expected and somehow worse. Tall, probably 6'2", confident in that easy way some people have, well-dressed in dark jeans and a fitted button-down. The kind of guy who walked into a room and immediately commanded attention. He spotted us, waved, walked over with a broad smile. Lauren. He hugged her, and she hugged him back, both of them laughing about something I wasn't part of. Then he turned to me, extended his hand. Tyler, right? Great to finally meet you. Lauren's told me so much about you. His handshake was firm, his smile warm. I wanted to dislike him immediately, but he was disarmingly friendly. Likewise, I said, though she'd barely told me anything about him until recently. We ordered food. He got the same dish Lauren ordered, which she pointed out with a laugh, saying they'd always had similar taste, and for the first 20 minutes, everything seemed fine. Cole was charming, funny, asked me about my work, seemed genuinely interested when I explained property appraisal. He shared stories about his job in tech sales, made self-deprecating jokes about startup culture, talked about his upcoming move to Denver for this amazing opportunity. And the whole time, I watched Lauren. The way she leaned toward him when he spoke. The way she'd reference inside jokes I wasn't part of. The way she'd glance at him before answering my questions, as if seeking his approval. The way her whole face lit up when he made her laugh, in a way I hadn't seen in months. Halfway through dinner, Cole excused himself to take a call. Something about his new job, he said apologetically. The moment he was out of earshot, I leaned forward. Are you sure there's nothing going on between you two? Lauren's face hardened immediately. Tyler, not this again. Please. I'm watching you flirt with him right in front of me. I'm not flirting. I'm being friendly. There's a difference, and the fact that you can't see that is honestly concerning. Lauren, you've barely looked at me all night. You're finishing his sentences. You ordered the same food. You light up around him in a way you haven't around me in months. Because you're sitting here sulking like a child instead of trying to have a good time and get to know him. This could have been nice. I wanted you two to meet, to see that there's nothing to worry about. But you're determined to make this into some drama. I took a breath, tried to steady myself. My hands were shaking slightly. I just don't understand why you'd put me in this position. Why invite me to dinner with your ex if you clearly have feelings for? If what? She cut me off, voice sharp enough that the couple at the next table glanced over. If I cared about your feelings? You don't have the right to question my decisions, Tyler. I'm allowed to have dinner with whoever I want. I'm allowed to have friends. If you can't handle that, if you're going to sit here and interrogate me, then maybe you should just leave. I stared at her. The woman I'd loved for 2 years, who I'd supported through bad work weeks and family drama and a health scare last spring, who I'd imagined a future with, was now speaking to me like I was an inconvenience. Like I was the problem. Something inside me just snapped. Not in an angry way. In a clear way. I stood up slowly, calmly. Pulled out my wallet. Left enough cash on the table to cover my portion of the bill and a generous tip. You're right, I said quietly, meeting her eyes. I don't have that right. And I'm not going to sit here and be treated like I don't matter. Her expression shifted. Shock, maybe a flicker of regret. Tyler, don't. Enjoy your dinner. And I walked out. Update 2. I sat in my car for a solid 15 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. My chest felt tight, my thoughts racing. Part of me couldn't believe I'd actually left. Part of me felt like I'd just done the hardest thing I'd ever done. My phone buzzed almost immediately, Lauren calling. I stared at her name on the screen, then declined. She called again. Declined. Then came the texts. Tyler, come back. You're being ridiculous. You just embarrassed me in front of Cole. We need to talk about this. You can't just walk out like that. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. Answer your phone. I read each one, felt my anger building, and then I did something I'd never done in any relationship. I blocked her. Blocked her number. Blocked her on Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. It felt drastic, extreme even. But I knew if I didn't, I'd get sucked back into her orbit. I'd let her gaslight me into thinking I'd overreacted, that I'd been insecure and immature and childish. And maybe part of me had been. But I also knew what I'd seen. I knew what I'd felt sitting at that table, watching her prioritize someone else while dismissing my legitimate concerns. The next few days were rough. I called in sick to work on the 20th, spent the day in bed, ignored everyone. By the weekend, I forced myself to get up, to function. I threw myself into work, avoided places I knew she frequented, ignored mutual friends who reached out asking what had happened. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. A week later, my buddy Carter texted me. Dude, just saw Lauren and some guy at that brewery in Fremont. They were all over each other. Thought you should know. You doing okay? I stared at that message for a long time, then replied, yeah, I'm good. Thanks for the heads up. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. The guy was obviously Cole, and honestly, I wasn't even surprised. If anything, it confirmed what I'd already known. By early December, I was doing better. Not great, but functional. I'd started going to the gym consistently, picked up some freelance appraisal work on the side to keep busy, reconnected with friends I'd neglected during the relationship. Life moved on, the way it always does. And then, on December 14th, I went out to dinner with Piper. Piper was Lauren's best friend. Or had been. They'd known each other since college, been inseparable for years. I'd always liked Piper. She was grounded, funny, brutally honest in a way that felt refreshing rather than mean. After the breakup, she'd reached out to me privately around Thanksgiving. Hey, I don't know exactly what happened between you two, and I'm not asking Lauren because honestly I'm frustrated with her right now. But I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that. You were good to her. We'd grabbed coffee a week after that message, just to talk. She didn't pry into details, didn't take sides publicly. She just listened. It was nice, uncomplicated. We discovered we both liked the same obscure podcasts, had similar taste in books, could talk for hours without it feeling forced. That dinner in December wasn't anything romantic. At least, not intentionally. We were both dealing with our own stuff. She'd recently ended things with her long-term boyfriend, a guy named Brendan who'd apparently been stringing her along about marriage for 3 years, and we'd become genuine friends. But there was something easy about being around her. Something comfortable. We were at this seafood place in Ballard, halfway through our meal, laughing about some ridiculous reality TV show we'd both been hate-watching, when I saw Lauren walk in. She was with Cole. They were laughing, his hand on the small of her back as the hostess led them to a table on the other side of the restaurant. And then, as if she could sense me, she turned her head and saw me. Her expression went through about 5 different emotions in 2 seconds. Shock, confusion, recognition, anger, and then something close to panic. And then she saw Piper sitting across from me. Her face went completely pale. Update 3. Lauren stopped mid-step, said something to Cole, and then walked directly toward our table. I felt my stomach drop. Piper saw her coming and muttered under her breath. Oh, here we go. Lauren stopped at our table, eyes locked on Piper, completely ignoring me at first. What the hell is this? Piper looked up calmly, setting down her fork. Dinner. What does it look like? You're having dinner with my ex-boyfriend? Her voice was loud enough that nearby tables were starting to notice. Your ex-boyfriend who you treated like garbage and cheated on emotionally, if not physically, yeah. We're friends. Is that a problem? Lauren's gaze finally shifted to me, and I could see genuine hurt there, mixed with fury and something else, maybe jealousy. You blocked me. You wouldn't even let me explain what happened that night. And now you're what? Trying to get back at me by going after my best friend. I set down my fork carefully, kept my voice level. I'm not trying to get back at anyone, Lauren. Piper and I are friends. That's it. We ran into each other, started talking, and realized we had things in common. It's not complicated. Bullshit. This is so calculated. You're doing this to hurt me. Actually, I said, feeling surprisingly calm, you don't cross my mind as much as you think you do anymore. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just living my life. Cole had walked up behind her now, standing awkwardly a few feet away, clearly uncomfortable. Lauren, maybe we should just stay out of this, she snapped at him without even looking. Then back to Piper. You, of all people. You knew how hard that breakup was for me. You were there when I was crying about it. And now you're sitting here with him. Piper's expression hardened. Hard for you. Lauren, you cheated on him. Emotionally, at minimum. Probably physically too, knowing you. You treated him like he didn't matter. Like he was just there to be your safety net while you figured out if things with Cole would work out. And when Tyler finally had enough self-respect to walk away, you acted like he was the problem. Like he was too insecure, too jealous, too whatever. That's not what happened. Yes, it is. And you know it. I didn't want to believe it at first because you're my best friend, and I wanted to give you the benefit of the doubt. But the more you talked, the more I heard from other people, the more obvious it became. You wanted to keep Tyler around as your stable, dependable backup plan while you explored things with Cole. And when Tyler didn't play along, when he actually respected himself enough to leave, you got mad. You felt entitled to keep him waiting. Lauren's eyes were wet now, her voice shaking. I loved him. I did. It was complicated. No, Piper said quietly but firmly. You loved the idea of him. You loved that he was stable and dependable and treated you well. But you didn't love him. Because if you did, you never would have done what you did. You never would have made him sit through that dinner and then told him he didn't have the right to question you. You never would have gaslit him into thinking his completely reasonable concerns were paranoia. Lauren looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment I saw the person I'd fallen for 2 years ago, vulnerable, uncertain, human. But then she blinked, and the walls went back up. Her jaw clenched. Fuck both of you, she said, voice shaking. She turned and walked toward the exit. Cole glanced at us apologetically, then followed her out. The restaurant had gone noticeably quieter. I could feel people staring. Piper exhaled slowly, picked up her water glass with a slightly trembling hand. Well, she said, that was fun. I didn't respond immediately. I was still processing what had just happened, what Piper had said, the fact that Lauren had looked genuinely hurt seeing us together. The fact that I'd felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just a kind of tired relief that maybe this was finally, actually over. You okay? Piper asked, studying my face. Yeah, I said. I think so. Are you? Yeah. I've been wanting to say that to her for weeks. I just didn't know how. Or when. Guess the universe decided for me. We finished our meal in relative silence after that. Both of us shaken, but somehow relieved. When the check came, I paid despite her protests, and we walked out into the cold December night. For the record, Piper said as we stood on the sidewalk, I didn't say any of that to hurt her. I mean, I know it did hurt her, but she needed to hear it. She's been doing this pattern for years, keeping guys on the hook while she figures out what she wants. Brendan told me stories. It's how she operates. I know. And for the record, she continued, looking at me seriously, I do think you're great. I think you handled that whole situation with way more grace than most people would. But if we're going to be friends, or anything else eventually, it has to be because we genuinely want to, not because we're both trying to move on from other people or get back at anyone. I won't be part of that. Agreed, I said. And honestly, I like hanging out with you because you make me laugh and you don't take yourself too seriously, and I can actually be myself around you. It has nothing to do with Lauren. She smiled at that. Good. Same here. We went our separate ways that night, but we texted later, and then the next day, and the day after that. Final update. It's been 3 months since that night at the restaurant. Lauren and Cole broke up sometime in January. Apparently, he got the job offer in Denver and didn't want to do long distance, and Lauren wasn't willing to leave Seattle. I heard this through mutual friends, not because I was asking, but because people still felt the need to keep me updated. She reached out to me once, in early February, through email since I'd blocked everything else. It was a long message, several paragraphs, explaining that she'd been confused and scared about where her life was going, that she'd handled everything poorly, that she'd been wrong to treat me the way she had, and that she hoped eventually I could forgive her. I read it twice, then archived it without responding. Not because I was angry anymore, but because there was nothing left to say. Some apologies come too late, and some bridges, once burned, aren't meant to be rebuilt. Piper and I are still figuring things out. We've been taking it slow, actually dating now, seeing where it goes. There's no rush. We're both in a place where we're okay being alone, which makes being together feel like a choice, not a need. It's different than what I had with Lauren. Lighter, easier, more honest. We argue sometimes, but we actually resolve things instead of letting them fester. She calls me on my bullshit, and I do the same for her. It feels balanced in a way I didn't know relationships could be. Mutual friends tell me Lauren's doing okay. She moved to Portland in March for a new job, trying to start fresh. I genuinely hope she's happy. I don't wish her ill. I think she's got a lot of growing up to do, a lot of patterns to break, but that's not my responsibility anymore. But I also don't regret walking out of that restaurant on November 19th. I don't regret blocking her. And I don't regret moving on. Sometimes the hardest thing you can do is recognize your own worth and refuse to settle for someone who doesn't see it. I spent too long trying to be enough for someone who'd already decided I wasn't. And the moment I stopped trying, the moment I chose myself, everything changed. I'm not bitter. I'm not heartbroken. I'm just free. And that feels pretty damn good. Some nights, usually when I'm alone, I think about that dinner with Cole. I think about how different things might have been if I'd stayed, if I tried to work it out, if I'd given her another chance. But then I remember how small I felt sitting at that table, how dismissed and disrespected, and I know I made the right call. You can't love someone into treating you better. You can't logic them into respecting you. All you can do is decide what you're willing to accept and walk away from anything less. I'm glad I walked away. Edit 1. A few people have asked if I think Piper and I will work out long term. Honestly, I don't know. But I'm not worried about it. We're both in a good place. We communicate well, and whatever happens, happens. No pressure, no expectations beyond taking it one day at a time. Edit 2. For those wondering, no, I didn't plan that restaurant run-in. Pure coincidence. Seattle's big, but certain neighborhoods and restaurants have overlap. Though in hindsight, it probably gave all three of us the closure we needed, even if it was messy getting there. Edit 3. Someone asked if I ever found out if Lauren and Cole were physical before we broke up. I don't know, and honestly, I don't need to know. It doesn't change anything. Whether they kissed or slept together or just had an emotional affair, the result is the same. She chose him over me, and I chose myself over her. That's enough.